Happy Friday and welcome to the final episode of BrainScratch for the year 2023. And boy, this mystery is tough to get my head around. I'm going to go through it again with you guys. Maybe you can help me understand this. But before we get to that, I did want to mention that a good friend of the channel, the Charley Project, and Meaghan Good, that does the amazing work for the Charley Project, they're struggling a little bit right now. And this is a time of year when I think a lot of us want to look out for others and maybe help others where we can. Right now is the perfect time to reach out and help the Charley Project. Now, we do make a monthly donation to the Charley Project. I'll be making another donation on top of that to help Meaghan through this tough period. We have to be sure to help support members of this community that are going the extra mile. Meaghan has been doing that for years. The Charley Project has been used as a resource on this, and I'm sure countless other YouTube channels, podcasts, and just to know that she's having trouble making ends meet just for her personal life is certainly troubling to me. And if any of you have seen Meaghan speak, know about her story, this is someone that we really need to stand behind. So please take a moment. There's a link in the description box down below pointing to her blog where she's outlining some of the challenges. With that, I'll also have a link directly to her PayPal so you can join me in making a donation to her this holiday season and maybe helping to make things a little bit easier for Meaghan so we can get her focused back on what's important, her work. Her work has a ripple effect through this industry like I don't think many people understand. So let's be sure to keep her supported. With that, let's get on to today's case, a case that actually starts as a missing persons investigation, but then unfortunately takes the turn into a death investigation. And there's aspects of this story that quite honestly sound too fantastical, sound almost made up. And for some people out there, it might make them wonder, is the person that's giving this information to the public, are they trustworthy? We're going to take this thing from start all the way to finish in terms of the information that's available. Unfortunately, it's been pretty much media silent on this case for a few months now, and we still don't even have a final determination from the coroner in terms of, is this a case of self-harm or is this officially a homicide? I think we're pretty much officially in the zone of homicide. We'll see if you agree with me as we go through this stuff. But let's get started with the missing persons poster. This is John Forsyth, 49 years old, stands at 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighs about 180 pounds with brown hair, blue eyes, and he was last seen on May 21st, 2023, around 7 a.m. It was actually a communication that he was having with his recently turned fiance, his girlfriend at the time. We'll get into those details, but it's noting here, subject did not report for work at Mercy Hospital. He is an ER doc there, someone that has not only that as his career path, but is a bit of like a math whiz, maybe a little bit of a programmer. He's into crypto, which kind of rides into this story as well. And I'm sure a prominent member of the community. This community, Cassville, is only about 3,000 people. So being the local ER doc there, I'm sure you're helping people that are in terrible, terrible situations in all kinds of different ways. So much so that he had kind of a special arrangement in terms of where he would stay when he was doing his 12-hour on, 12-hour off shifts. But let's go ahead and learn a little bit more about where this is taking place. Cassville, Missouri. It's a city in Flat Creek Township in Berry County, Missouri. According to the 2020 census, the population was 3,190. We're talking a small community. But it is worth noting here, Cassville is one of the primary markets and job centers for an estimated 14,000 people living in the surrounding area. So you might think, how busy is an ER where the community is only about 3,000 people? You've got a lot more people in that surrounding area, so maybe a bit busier than you might expect. It's also the county seat of Berry County. So getting into the articles, we're starting at ozarksfirst.com. The Cassville Police Department reported that 49-year-old John Forsyth was missing after he didn't show up for his job at Mercy Hospital on Sunday, May 21st. He was last seen at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, and his vehicle was later located at the Cassville Aquatic Center. Now, he was actually also seen at 7 a.m. Basically, he was coming off of his shift at the emergency room around 7 a.m. He did also text his fiance around that time. But let's learn a little bit about the Cassville Aquatic Center, and I'm just curious what the distance is. It's literally about a mile away from the hospital that he works at. And honestly, that's driving distance. I think I've got it actually on walking mode right now. So there must not be a shortcut, but if you kind of cut through this big patch of land here, you could probably walk there, I would say, in probably 10, 12 minutes. So his vehicle will be found at this location. So for some reason, he does decide to drive this not quite a mile away right after his shift that morning. It's one of the questions in this case as to why. But let's learn a little bit about the Aquatic Center, because there's another important condition about it at this time. Over at cityofcassville.com. Cassville's Aquatic Center is a 200,000-gallon family-friendly playground in partnership with the Cassville YMCA, and it's open every summer between Memorial Day and closing around the second weekend in August. So he goes missing on the 21st, and Memorial Day for 2023 wouldn't actually happen until Monday, May 29th, 2023. So he's going to this park center that is essentially closed at that time. That's already interesting. And then, of course, where his vehicle is found is going to be another piece that is a little tricky to understand. Here's a picture of it. His vehicle is actually found in this area that looks like it's really kind of for debris. It looks like, clippings from them keeping up with the lawn and maybe, trimming the trees and stuff is kind of brought back into this area and left in this back area. That's where his vehicle is found. And that's not the official parking lot for this area. There is a parking lot. There's tons of parking here that could have been used. That's not where he parked. He drove past all that, came up this kind of service road that goes by the baseball diamonds here, took that all the way back. And here we can see that fence that we're seeing in the photo with kind of the mounds of the grass and yard clippings. And this is where his car would wind up parked. Now, initially off of seeing something like this, I think many of us out there that are going through this together are thinking of the possibility of some type of self-harm situation. And I think that's fair. There's conditions in this that I think are going to move us away from that as we continue. But let's go ahead and jump into some more information over at ky3.com. Forsyth was last seen Sunday at 7 a.m. wearing a black shirt with blue-gray pants. Law enforcement says he stays in a trailer near the hospital when he works in Cassville. Very near the hospital. As a matter of fact, it's in the hospital's parking lot. Police believe that after he left the clinic, he went back to his trailer for a short amount of time. Police say his car had been sitting in a waste area in the park that is kind of hidden, at least since noon on Sunday. Police went to the car and saw that the keys were still in it and the doors were unlocked. Trying to get a little close up on this photo that we have here. I believe the sign on the right actually talks about that there's no dumping. It doesn't look like it's supposed to be a parking area. This does look like it actually has a sliding gate. This gate has barbed wire running across the top of it. I'm curious why the gate's even open, particularly if the park's closed at this time. Maybe it's just something that, they don't watch very tightly. They leave it open so that the yards keepers can get in and out of there easily. But kind of a question why the vehicle's parked back here. And then, of course, with the keys in it and it being unlocked, there's also, we're going to learn some other valuables that were left in the car that you wouldn't usually leave in the car, even outside of, especially considering his keys are in there. Police say that a canine used scent from his clothes and car and found his scent in a brush pile, but nothing came up. So basically they got a hit for somewhere around the car that he was there, but we kind of could figure that. Authorities used a heat signature drone as well. Officers did search his trailer and they found 2 cell phones. Now, I'm seeing varying reports there, but I've also heard that at least there's a cell phone that's found in his car. So we do have him having multiple phones. I've looked into that a bit. There's many articles out there. There's kind of been a recent push in the past few years about having separate cell phones, having one for your business, having one for your personal life. Some people that are a little more tech savvy might not need that, because you could actually have different apps on your phones that give you access to different phone numbers, and you can kind of, categorize your calls that way. But this is a person that, at least of these articles we're hearing, has multiple cell phones for some reason. And of course, in those searches that I did about why would a person have multiple cell phones, I did also bump into the conclusion that many of you out there are having right now, that possibly if there's some type of drug dealing going on, you might have multiple phones. I just bring that up because the conditions of this car being found in this area, we're pretty sure that he took it to this area. It's within reason to speculate that he was meeting up with someone here. And why would he have met up with them here when he's literally got a trailer that's in the parking lot of the hospital that's less than a mile away? So I think we have to stay open to that possibility. He's an ER doc. Does he have access to narcotics that people would want? Yes, absolutely he does. Do I think that he's going to be doing street level dealing? I don't think so at all. But could there be something else happening in this story where he's interfacing with someone, he's passing along something to them, and they're going and selling that? I think we have to stay open to that possibility, just with the conditions that we're talking about here. But Forsyth has a fiance as well. She has not heard from him and says that this is odd behavior from him. Very odd. Just the location of that car, knowing that the park's closed at that time, knowing that it's so close to a place where, like, if he wanted to meet with someone, he's got a trailer. And I'm not talking just, I mean, it is a nice trailer. That trailer costs more than a lot of people's homes. It's a very, very nice trailer. He could have met with them there if it was something easy, like if it was, a family member that wanted to meet up with him, or something along those lines. So we do have a little media here. We're going to hear from local law enforcement about one of the important considerations with this case. One of the big questions we have right off the bat: why would he be there?
His fiance tells investigators he wouldn't have been at that park.
Absolutely no reason in the world why he would be at that park. She said no, he does not go walking. He does not do anything. No reason in the world why he would be at the city park, period.
Even outside of that consideration, if he did go walking, why is he going to drive less than a mile to go walking? Like, he could just walk, like I said, cut across that field. He would have been at the park within a 10-minute walk anyway. So this certainly doesn't seem to be some thing where he was looking for exercise. This seems to be something else. And even outside of that, if he was going to go to the park and go for a walk, are you going to leave your keys in the car and leave your car unlocked? A lot of that just doesn't seem to hold up, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense here. Continuing with the next article, we have some quotes from his brother Richard, who kind of becomes the media-facing family member in this case. "I don't know why my brother is missing. I don't know why he would leave behind his wallet, his passport, his checkbook, his keys, and an unlocked car," said his brother Richard Forsyth. So not just his keys are in there. Everything else is in there. That his wallet, I kind of question why his passport would even be in the car, but I guess some people might carry that around. Why leave your wallet, your keys, and at least one cell phone behind in the car? It's just, my head is kind of stuck on this track of, if there was some type of dealing that he was doing and he wasn't sure about the type of people that he was meeting up with, would he do that as a means of, hey, I'm going into a situation where I might get robbed, so I'm going to leave everything, of that nature behind. So I wouldn't have anything to give them if someone pulls a gun on me, let's say, or something like that. But even outside that, if you're worried about being robbed, you're leaving your car in a place with all your valuables and it's unlocked and the keys are in it. I don't know. The logic around this is tough to follow. There has been other cases that we've looked into that do or have been concluded to be self-harm situations. And in many of those situations, people will leave these important items behind. Basically, in some of these cases, they don't want to be identified when their bodies are found. So that's a reason for that. In this case, maybe he didn't want to be tracked for some reason. Maybe that's why you would leave the phone behind. But I don't understand. Either it leads me to one of two conclusions. Either he believed he was going to stay extremely local and he would be back at the car within a reasonable amount of time, that it wasn't really a risk to leave all that stuff in there. But even then, you'd kind of question, why are you going to empty your pockets before you go walk somewhere? But or he wasn't going to come back to the car, and he was going to leave all this stuff and leave it available so that at some point someone could come along and figure out, oh, this is Dr. Forsyth's stuff. So there's kind of opposing viewpoints that you could take with conditions like this. John's family said that they've been shown security footage showing a person they believe is John and another car around 7:15 a.m. So first confirmation here that we do have another vehicle. This vehicle is described as a white SUV. Now, from what I understand, the footage that's captured at this park is on a motion-triggered camera, and it's not a camera that all of a sudden kicks on and starts recording, full video. It kind of starts strobing and grabbing snapshots. So the footage that they have, not very great. It's been described as, even them confirming that it's his car, it's been described as they saw a black block in the footage that they know was a vehicle that was driving in, and they found his car there later. They don't have footage of that same black block leaving, so they can presume that, okay, that is footage of his car that actually entered. What about this white vehicle? Quote, we have the white vehicle leaving about 3 minutes after that, and then 10 to 15 minutes after that, someone looking quite a bit like my brother, the image is a bit blurry, exiting his car, Richard said. The clothing he was wearing fits his last known description. He walked a bit and then walked away. So just kind of a very strange interaction in terms of timing. Like there's another vehicle that pulls in. Some descriptions that I've seen, for some reason, in later versions of the retelling of this footage, it's said that the SUV actually pulls up and parks right next to where his vehicle is. There's other versions that say he actually gets out and he goes into the SUV, but I don't know which version to believe here. The story seems to kind of be changing as things are going along. It's not like police have released the video. We can't review it for ourselves. I haven't even seen still images here. We're relying on information that the family is basically giving us based on their recollection of what happened. And maybe that's why it's changing. Maybe in later interviews, that unfortunately happens with our memories. Sometimes we start filling in gaps for ourselves that seem logical. But so that's the description we have on the footage. A few days into Dr. John Forsyth being missing, we have an update from Sergeant Donald Prevet with the Cassville Police Department. He says that we've had 36 personnel from 13 different agencies, varying from Cassville PD, Missouri Department of Conservation, all the area fire protection districts. We've done a grid search of approximately 90 acres around the city park, into the woodlands, next to the city park, and didn't locate anything. And I would think it's probably fair to say that one of the things that they're looking into is the possibility that maybe he did end his life. And unfortunately, for doctors, there is a percentage of that happens. There's a few hundred doctors every year that do end their own lives. So it looks like they're running that very strongly. They have his car left there. All of his valuables are left behind, and they're checking that local area. They don't find anything. They're not finding any signs of a struggle. They're not finding, any blood that's been found in it, with just nothing. We have another quote from his brother Richard here. A lot of oddities about his disappearance, and police kind of agreed after investigation that the circumstances are pretty suspicious. Now, Sergeant Prevet tells KOLR 10 that in his gut, he believes Forsyth is somewhere and that he's alive. He also says that he's never seen a missing persons case of this magnitude, and there's no signs of foul play at the scene of where the vehicle was found. the same where his RV is parked. So they went and they checked where his RV is. Are there any signs of foul play around there? Like, what if something happened back at the RV? He was attacked. The person forced him into his vehicle, took him to this location. So good check there. There might have been things there, but they didn't find anything. Forsyth's brother says that the family has been helping with the investigation. He adds that his brother has always been good to others, whether he was working or not. He's a very good man. He's a generous man, very kind man, very patient man. He's a person who's admired by a lot of people. He's a great doctor who works very hard. He's given a lot of his free time to helping people. I've been through a lot of health issues in the last year, and he's been like a guardian angel to me. Sergeant Prevette also tells KOLR 10 that there's a forensic examination of 2 phones and a laptop found in Forsyth's car. So we're hearing about another phone. I knew there was at least one. I believe there's at least 2 up to this point that we've noted found in his trailer. Now we're hearing that there was also a laptop found in his car, and just another strange reason, or it just raises that question, why are you going to leave that car unlocked? Why not lock the car, take your keys, and know all that stuff has some reasonable level of safety in terms of being left behind? Richard said that his brother got engaged 3 days before he disappeared and days after finalizing his divorce from his first wife. So kind of on this list of possibilities in terms of motives, if someone wanted to harm him, we have him going through a divorce. This is a father of 8. He has 7 with this wife that he is going through the divorce with, and then he has 1 with a girlfriend outside of that. An uncontested divorce settlement was issued May 11th that awarded his ex-wife about $19,000 a month in alimony and child support, Richard added. So from everything I'm seeing, there was no real argument about how the marriage dissolved. We have mentioned that he was into crypto. He made some money in crypto. It looks like he split that with his ex-wife. $19,000 a month. I would think that she wants him working and that money coming in to help support their children for their lives, for their futures, for them to go off to college and have their careers as well. So now we don't know the conditions around how that relationship really broke down. Was there something really bad that was going on with that? Would she have some reason to be very angry at him? Or someone in her circle have some reason to be angry with him? We really don't know. But I think kind of based on the mechanics of what we're seeing here, his ex-wife, I don't think would have wanted anything to happen to him there. So in terms of a motive kind of coming from that direction, not really sure that I see something outside of if there was some really harsh interpersonal thing that was being dealt with in that we just don't know about. He reportedly had a trip planned to see several family members and friends in Idaho and Utah beginning May 22nd, including his second oldest daughter who had just completed her Mormon mission. So basically, like, he had tickets bought, travel booked for this trip to go see his family. And we have him basically processing this divorce, just finalizing that, and then getting engaged to another woman. So it seems like, I mean, yeah, divorce is a terrible thing. You're going to deal with all kinds of weird feelings if you ever go through that. But for him to be entering a new relationship, proposing to her, that's usually kind of a high point for people. So it's just very curious. It's very curious to look at someone going through that kind of life change and then trying to weigh that information and say, could this mean that someone would want to harm him? Could this mean that he would want to harm himself? It's tough. There's a lot of it's a very tangled story we're going through today, but I'm just trying to be fair with you guys about the considerations on this and kind of how I'm seeing them as we're hitting them here. The doctor's family had been distraught over the baffling disappearance and launched a Facebook page to try to track him down. Unfortunately, that is now a memorial page. We'll get to the details of the discovery around that, but let's continue with what happened around the search and what was some of their thoughts around the search, because that might play into some of when we do make the discovery about him being deceased, especially tips that come in. So here at the New York Post, we have some information that came into the family. The Missouri ER doctor who vanished without a trace last week was texting his new fiancée the morning he disappeared. He even assured her that she would see him soon, before he suddenly stopped responding. Dr. John Forsyth had texted his fiancée around 7 a.m. to let her know that he had finished his shift at Mercy Hospital in Cassville. "I'll see you a little bit later," the doctor told her. But within minutes, he stopped responding, and he was seen walking to the RV where he stayed in the hospital parking lot. Security footage then showed his Infiniti arriving at the nearby Cassville Aquatic Center before a white SUV pulled up near him. Now, there's a part of that story that we're missing, and that is, does the hospital have any cameras on the parking lot as well? Because they could have kind of closed the hoop in terms of, we don't think anything happened to him in the parking lot. If they had footage of him driving out of the parking lot, they could see he was alone in his car or something like that. Nothing like that has been released publicly. It's just something I'm wondering about in terms of the investigation. I'm sure they've collected all the camera footage that they can from the hospital and probably along the route. Because you saw, I mean, yeah, it was only a mile, but it kind of hooked up around some corners. I don't know if there was some businesses possibly around that. Let's just take a quick look. Oh, that's interesting. We have a dispensary that is showing up on here, but we have, I don't know if there's a lot of businesses. Yeah, it's kind of going down a back road behind where the businesses are. If it would have been out here, it would have been, but there is a tobacco shop that's up here. So on this corner, it looks like there's a few businesses. There's some businesses here, including a Sonic, a McDonald's across the street. So plenty of opportunities for cameras to pick up his travel. I just think that they're feeling pretty confident that he wound up here alone. Of course, we know once he shows up, then apparently this white SUV also pulls in there, meets up with him. There's a delay of a few minutes, and then he seems to exit on foot and goes walking off. He does not go walking back to his car. At least that's been publicly disclosed. I'm pretty sure that we would have heard of that. So that seems to be kind of the last sighting, at least in terms of what's been released publicly. Car found where he left it, unlocked with his keys, wallet, and passport inside, also laptop, according to that other article. His brother then notes, basically he was noticed missing at 7 p.m. So he got off at 7 a.m. He was supposed to go back on to duty at 7 p.m. He didn't. And the hospital, that's when they kind of raised the flags of, we don't know where Dr. Forsyth is. His brother says he wouldn't miss a shift even if his eyeballs were hanging out of their sockets. It was an immediate red flag. I've heard Richard describe this a few different ways. I think in another one he said even if he had a broken leg, he would still show up to work. This is a guy that just very dedicated to it and really loved that work as well. That's part of the reasoning around him having his trailer there. Like, he would just work these insane long shifts. This isn't like a 40-hour-a-week job. This guy's working like 80 to 100, maybe more hours a week. So literally he's getting off a shift, going out to his trailer, or sometimes he might even be on a shift, but things kind of slow down. You know, his trailer's right there. He could go out there, rest up a little bit before the next big emergency comes in. Richard told the Daily Beast that he had last seen his brother during a 2-hour dinner the week before he went missing, and that he seemed really happy and excited as he'd just gotten engaged days after his divorce was finalized. So he's basically talking to his brother about this new relationship and this life reboot that he's going through. And his brother is saying that, you know, he seemed happy, seemed like everything was great, not just fine, that everything was really good, that he was happy and excited. Nothing seemed weird, Richard said, which makes John vanishing that much weirder. Richard said that his family received 3 possible leads from the public, and he passed that information on to the cops. One of the most credible tips came from a woman who says that she spotted someone matching Forsyth's description at Cassville's South Park. That area is also called South Park. So it sounds like that's a legit sighting, like she actually saw him there. Forsyth was wearing a black button-down shirt with white long sleeves and gray jeans when he went missing, and the tipster claimed that she saw someone wearing that same exact outfit at the hiking trail south of the aquatic center at around 12:30 p.m. Now, it's interesting because the tip sounds credible. We've got the location right, but the time, 12:30 p.m., is kind of weird. His car was actually found at 12:15. At least that's when it was noticed that it was at the center. So the timing of that, I'm not sure. Like if we're believing this situation, if we run down the possibility that he met up with someone and then he went and maybe he met up with the SUV in another part of the park and they drove off somewhere, that's happening at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So this sighting happening around 12:30, unless he was there for a prolonged period of time, went walking around, maybe was heading back to his car, and then someone, I don't know, someone took him away from that point. It's strange because the sighting seems credible in terms of description of his clothing and location, but the time is a little weird. The woman said that the man she saw appeared to be walking in a hurry. Once again, this information coming from his brother, Richard. Richard said that another tip came in about a possible sighting at the Roaring River Hatchery, a popular tourist spot in the Roaring River State Park located about 8 miles south of the aquatic center. Tipster claimed to have seen the doctor at the nature trail around 11:15 a.m., about an hour before his car was seen at the parking lot in the aquatic center. Richard said investigators are looking to see if the hatchery has any footage of Forsyth on that morning. The final tip revolved around the aquatic center's parking lot, where a woman claimed to have seen a blue van with tinted windows driving back and forth around the area where police found Forsyth's car. This is the only instance I've seen about that information that's been relayed through the media. And I think it's kind of important because, yes, we have this white SUV that is seen and we have varying descriptions in terms of what happened around that. But what is clear in all those descriptions is the white SUV kind of goes in, maybe meets up with John for a few minutes and then leaves. And he stays for 10 to 15 minutes before he gets out and starts walking around. That is just making me question the white SUV, like the importance of the white SUV. Is it still really driving around? Is that the vehicle that he would later leave in for some reason? Or is there something else? Is there something to do with a blue van with tinted windows that was noticed driving around that area back and forth? Richard said that while it could ultimately be unrelated to his brother's case, it did raise suspicions given Forsyth's car was located in a remote area of the parking lot. Richard also said it was not immediately clear if the white SUV played a role in his brother's disappearance. I'm wondering the same thing. Although I would say I do feel like it plays some role because it seems to be the motivation for him being there. I don't think it's a coincidence that a car drives into that area, that particular area. He's not in the general parking lot. And then a few minutes later, another vehicle drives in and meets up with him. That is playing into his reason for being at the park in some way. Does that tie directly to his disappearance? I don't know. But it does get him to the location where he's last seen. So there's some motivating factor about that white SUV that isn't quite clear at this point. Richard noted that the footage from the parking lot appeared to be unreliable, and he wouldn't be able to tell if Forsyth traveled back and forth from the lot. The information I saw from law enforcement was a little more clear, at least that they know that that black block that they thought that they assumed was his car did not leave. The two brothers had founded their own cryptocurrency company in 2019, Onfo, to help those in developing countries break into the then booming market after Forsyth made his own wealth on Bitcoin. Richard lamented that without his brother, the company will likely crash. So this is a little bit of an interesting turn. And for some reason, the crypto aspect to this story has become a very strong throughput to it. And maybe for good reason, maybe not. I'll kind of let you guys weigh that as we crack into it. But here's the Facebook page for Onfo Coin. This is the company that they started together. We can see cryptocurrency will replace government currency in time. They also posted a YouTube video that's basically saying, you know, hey, the US dollar is going to crash at some point. You got to get into crypto. Here we go. Cryptocurrency is the future. Even with the downturn in Bitcoin, Onfo token value has remained stable. So they do have their own token. It's a little different in terms of what I understand. It's It's a cryptocurrency that I guess you don't necessarily purchase. I've got a description that we're going to hit there, but one of the later posts, this one from March 22nd, 2023, ONFO is not going away. We're here for the long haul. Our day will come. Join the revolution. So there is an aspect of him being tied to this kind of anti-establishment, upstart organization. Is that responsible in some way for his disappearance? That is certainly a question that has been a strong throughput in a lot of the media that we're going to go through here. Let's see what else we can learn just about this company. First of all, I tried to bring up the website. The website seems to be gone at this point. But at Fox News, we do get a bit of a description here. Here's a picture of John with his brother, Richard. In an interview with Forbes in 2020, Forsyth talked about investing in Bitcoin early on, which made him a millionaire. It became obvious to me that math-based currencies like Bitcoin would eventually supplant sovereign notes, he told the business magazine. I mined Bitcoin and Litecoin very early on and held on to them. The massive appreciation of those assets allowed me to invest in other cryptocurrency technology, which ultimately led to the development of ONFO. His brother Richard said, ONFO is a purely philanthropic venture. He called it a cryptocurrency designed to be accessible to the masses, unlike Bitcoin, which must be bought or mined. Apparently, you could sign up basically for free. And from what I've seen, there's been some comparisons to it almost being kind of like a pyramid scheme, like you have to bring in other people under you to kind of keep your value going up in some way. But anyways, that's a very, I'm sure that's a very overly simplistic view of their offering. At one point, the ONFO website went dark, and there were other hiccups in the endeavor which rankled some users, Richard said. People were angry at us for a variety of reasons. We were trying to innovate. We were trying to do something new. In any finance-related business, you get a lot of malice in a concentrated form. It's pretty clear they're trying to hit some type of anti-establishment form of cryptocurrency here. And would that make them a target in some way is a bit of a question, because we now have John Forsyth all of a sudden go missing after meeting up with someone. Is it a stretch? There's more information that might change your perspective on that. Let's continue here with the next article. Family members said Forsyth spent most of his downtime trying to determine how to make cryptocurrency beneficial to society, which sometimes got them into trouble. Like one hacker battle with some internet dude, Richard admitted. We've made some enemies, he added. So apparently, his brother thinks that this might be, he's at least bringing it up in terms of a consideration of what could have happened and why John is missing at the point of these articles. Missing Dr. John Forsyth, found dead a week after he vanished. So I believe it's 9 days after he would be discovered, and in a pretty interesting place, not anywhere around where his car was. Dr. Forsyth's body was discovered in a lake in northwest Arkansas. He's found not even in the same state, more than a week after he vanished from Cassville, Missouri. Now, Cassville is kind of in the south end of Missouri, and the location where he's found kind of in the northwest end of Arkansas. He's actually found in the water of Beaver Lake, close to this area known as Lost Bridge South Park. This drive time is showing about 34 minutes here, but based on what the local news coverage is saying, there's a lot of twisty roads, and this is actually closer to like an hour drive from where he was last spotted at Cassville Aquatic Center. So, and it's interesting to me that we have him found across state lines. It kind of raises two possibilities in my mind. Either the possibility that maybe he was hoping to not be found, or if he was found, eventually his remains not be connected to the missing person record because he would be in a different state. Or the possibility that a criminal might be thinking along those lines, that once his remains would be found, if it was in a different state, maybe that would impede or slow down the investigation. And here we see a picture of the lake where he was found and the emergency services that are out there. Of course, they had a dive team go in and check the area for evidence. One of the big questions from this that we don't have answered is, did they find any potential weapon? I mean, at this point in the coverage, we don't even know how his life was taken. But I can tell you, there has been no information publicly released about any weapon that is tied to his demise being found. Do they have it? It's possible, but we'll see some information later that raises a little question on that. Over at Yahoo News, the Benton County Sheriff's Department said that around 4:43 on May 30th, deputies received a call from a kayaker about a body in the water near the bank across from Lost Bridge South area. Dr. Forsyth was found deceased in the water with what appears to be a gunshot wound, a spokesperson for the Sheriff's Department added. Benton County detectives are working this death investigation alongside Berry County Sheriff's Office, Cassville Police Department, and Missouri State Police. This is an active investigation, and no further information will be released at this time. Maybe they should have said at any time, because basically they are releasing practically no information on this case at all. Most of the information that we're getting about this case is coming from his family, and very specifically, most of it is coming from Richard. A few of his other siblings have spoken. He's one of 7 siblings. So a few of the sisters have popped up in a couple of interviews, really just kind of talking about his personality and what they're going through in terms of the disappearance. But in terms of the details about the investigation, it's really Richard that is sharing all that information with the media. It was not immediately clear if the gunshot wound was self-inflicted. Over at the Associated Press, we learned that Richard said that the family was mystified by his brother's death and rejected the theory that he might have taken his own life. I don't believe it, he said. John would never do that. I won't accept that possibility. John, again, was the father of 8 children. His brother-in-law, Jason Musgrave, on a call with the Associated Press, also rejected the idea of John dying by taking his own life. He said, quote, "I feel like it's foul play. I feel like it has to have been." He also added that it was hard to imagine that anyone who knew him would want to hurt Dr. John Forsyth. He was funny and engaging and the life of the party, Musgrave said. He said that the news of his brother-in-law's body had been found had hit the family like a bus full of bricks. Gina Forsyth Farlano said that her brother was smart, confident, loved to help people, and was devoted to his family. In the days since his disappearance, she said that the family has heard at least 3 stories of people who he persuaded not to harm themselves. So, you know, he's in an emergency room. Occasionally, he's probably going to come across situations where people are having extreme emotional issues as well. It sounds like he actually helped save several lives by telling people it was worth hanging in there. It wasn't worth giving up on life. Would that type of person actually not follow their own advice? Over at Fox 4 KC, missing Missouri doctor's death to be investigated as a homicide. So some confirmation here, although once again, it's not coming directly from law enforcement. Richard Forsyth said detectives told him they are investigating his brother's death as a homicide. The coroner in Arkansas expects autopsy results to take about 90 days. Now, this is really unfortunate. Apparently, there's some backlog that is happening at the Arkansas State Crime Lab. And he actually notes in other articles that he's waiting on results for tests that he had sent in back in January and February, and that's almost 6 months later. So this 90 days thing, I think is him being optimistic, because quite honestly, we still haven't heard about these results, and we're now 6 months away from this occurrence. He also noted other aspects of the investigation will continue while the coroner awaits autopsy results. And basically the coroner says in later articles that they're not going to release any of the results until the investigation has concluded. He had no guns, notes his brother Richard. I talked to him about that. He didn't want to have a gun. At this point, it looks like he was abducted and killed and thrown into a lake, Richard said. Just looking at it from my point of view, that's what it seems like. There was also a statement released from the hospital, Mercy Hospital in Cassville. We invite everyone to join us in praying for Dr. Forsyth's family. our coworkers, and the entire community impacted by this tragedy. We're providing emotional and spiritual support to our coworkers through our employee assistance program, pastoral care team, and other resources. His brother Richard says, we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to figure out what happened. We're not satisfied with just that he was found. This kind of barbaric behavior has to be uncovered. This has to be dealt with. So we have a story of the missing doctor now turned to the deceased doctor. We know it's a gunshot wound. We know he's found in a lake in a different state. We've got this cryptocurrency angle and talk that maybe there are some people that would be upset at the company that these brothers were starting. Of course, this thing just goes nationwide in terms of news coverage, despite the fact that there's really not a ton of information. The information that is out there is just repeated strongly through all of the major news sources. And with that comes a bunch of conjecture and theories, and the family starts trying to deal with those. So we have the brother Richard here trying to shut down rumors surrounding Dr. Forsyth's disappearance. Those rumors include the notion that a court order for child support and alimony totaling nearly $20,000 were a motive in John's disappearance, but Richard Forsyth said that the money was not a concern. $20,000 a month, I don't think anyone could just take a blink at, but apparently we have a guy that has been making money for a while in terms of the cryptocurrency angle, but also he's an emergency room doctor and has been doing so, I think, at that location for at least 15 years. So sounds like he's had a good, stable career. And I think the court is going to award a fair amount for the family to be taken care of. From what I understand, in that $20,000, I think only $3,000 or $4,000 of it is actually alimony, and the rest is actually child support, which, based on what I'm understanding about John through what we're learning from his family, I don't think that he's the type of guy that's going to scoff at taking care of his family like that. So, but of course, even when we ran into that information, my first thing was trying to analyze, is there some angle in terms of that might play into this case in some way? Basically, the family's coming back and saying, hey, look, that $20,000 a month for him, not necessarily a concern. Another unfounded rumor surrounded a cryptocurrency company that the two brothers launched together, but Richard shot that down too. Now that's interesting, because the only thing that's really kind of propping up that possibility are quotes that came from Richard, but we have some new information here. He did, however, say that there was one person who they believed was upset with his brother, but that individual was overseas. Richard Forsyth is also confident that the isolated incident is not relevant to the investigation. So now he's calling it out even further. Before he was like, there were some people mad at us, but that always happens when you try to do something like that. Now he's saying, this sounds like there was almost a legit threat at some point from one specific person. Quote, he expressed some extreme emotions towards us that he would get revenge. And ultimately his campaign failed, and we didn't hear from him again, Richard said. I don't see that being enough motivation for someone to cross the Atlantic and cause trouble. So it's weird. Does that really shoot down the cryptocurrency angle? Not completely for me. And there's another piece to that story that we haven't quite hit yet. But his brother said that the devoted healthcare worker may have been in danger because he had previously been kidnapped. Does this relate to the cryptocurrency thing as well? Quote, many times he mentioned that he might be in danger. According to the grieving brother, Forsyth was mysteriously kidnapped and released in February of 2022. It was cold, he was zip-tied, he was made to feel very unsafe and taken on a car ride with some people to a bridge, and he was threatened, Richard said. Richard, who said he only found out about the alleged kidnapping from a friend after his brother went missing, shared that a police report was never filed. He did not file a police report because he believed he was in continued danger. Richard said he didn't know who would want to harm his brother. So we keep kind of getting these knocks in that direction of like, okay, maybe there's some weird business angle. There's some other thing. There seems to be some component of his life that isn't about him being an ER doctor, that might not be about him being a husband going through a divorce or a fiance going into a new marriage. There seems to be some other aspect of his life. And in the interviews I've watched from his family, it seems like his family is kind of getting their heads around that too. Like one of his sisters very specifically said, we're starting to understand he might have been compartmentalizing his life, that there was kind of a version of John that you would get and a different version of John that someone else would get. So if he was compartmentalizing kind of his relationships, his interpersonal relationships in that way, could he be doing the same with business? Could there be some aspect, like maybe it's not the cryptocurrency angle. Maybe if there was him meeting up at the park with someone and there was some type of exchange happening, maybe it has to do with that. I don't know. I think that this is just such a tricky situation because the person that knows him the best seems to be Richard. Richard is partners with him apparently in several businesses. But it seems like Richard doesn't even have the whole story. You know, his brother goes missing and then later a friend comes up and is like, oh, hey, by the way, your brother was kidnapped and this happened and this happened and that happened. Of course, we're also once again hearing all these details from Richard, which I'm sure is raising suspicions for some of you out there. We're not done. Let's continue. So Dr. Forsyth's ex-wife doesn't really come out publicly exactly. She does speak through her attorney. We have it here from Yahoo News. Ex-wife of Missouri doctor found shot dead in Arkansas Lake is devastated as mystery engulfs case. Forsyth's recent divorce from the mother of his, it's actually 7 children. I keep seeing that in the article. Some people understand that 7 kids are with her, and then there's another one from someone else. But anyway, Forsyth's recent divorce from the mother of his children was amicable. The woman's attorney, Ryan Ricketts, told the Associated Press. The couple married in 1995 in Nevada. They divorced in 2019, but then they remarried the following year in July, I believe, of 2020. And then they got divorced for a second time in April of 2022. His ex-wife, who lives in Idaho, did not wish to be identified, and she was given custody of their underage children, and Forsyth continued to have a strong relationship with them, Mr. Ricketts told the AP. She's just devastated, and I mean just shocked. She never saw any of this kind of thing coming. So that's the information we have from her. We then have some new information about his new relationship. Doctor found dead from gunshot wound, was expecting baby with nurse fiance. So his fiance turns out to be a nurse, worked at the same hospital as him, and she's pregnant, and they're about to get married. According to, before he goes missing, according to Fox News Digital with cites an unnamed source, Dr. John Forsyth's fiance is currently 8 months pregnant with their first child. The couple worked together at Mercy Hospital in Cassville. All right, so the time of this article is June. She's 8 months pregnant at that point, so she would have been, well, yeah, I mean, he was out of his marriage the second time. It seems like it was just that the agreement in terms of child support and finances wasn't solidified yet. I was just wondering if this might have been one of those interpersonal things that I was looking for in terms of, you know, some type of motive for someone to want to harm him, but I don't think that time frame really fits it quite well for that. It could be. I just don't know. Forsyth's father, Robert Forsyth, confirmed the pregnancy and said he learned he was going to be a grandfather once more after his son died. I have never cried and prayed so much as the last 2 weeks, his father Robert said. It's just been wrenching. They were planning their wedding, he said, of the pair's pending nuptials. And it would become public information. This is his fiancée. Her name is Laura Barnett. And she, at this point, pregnant with his baby. Doctor's family reveals chilling new details. We get to June 2023, and once again, Richard is sharing more information about the case. It's my understanding he was killed by a single gunshot wound to the head, and it was not him ending his own life. Richard also learned that John was likely murdered the same day that he vanished. I was curious about that as I was looking into this too, because there could have been a gap in time. Like it could have been that he disappeared for some reason from the park. He went somewhere else, was held there. Like we had 9 days in there, but it looks like they believe that his time of death fits that same day that he disappeared from the park. This was planned. This was very neatly done, and it's very sinister, Richard said. I want to know if my family's in danger. I want to know if I'm in danger. We don't have that information. The only other comment that I've seen from law enforcement is they've put out to the public, and they basically want to tell the public that you're not in danger. So it's interesting to me that we have Richard kind of making this comment saying, hey, I want to know if my family's in danger, and we don't have that information. It's also interesting in knowing that if investigators previously told him this is being investigated as a homicide, there should be some assumption that, yeah, you might be in danger, especially if we don't know the reason. What if it is tied to this business that they're in together or one of their other businesses? I don't know. His mother, Dixie Forsyth, who spoke publicly for the first time in an interview with Fox News Digital, said there were red flags. I remember him telling me once he came over for a Sunday dinner a year ago, he leaned over and said, I have a feeling I'm not going to live very long. She recalled of the grim premonition. And I said, what are you talking about? It kind of scared me. And he said, oh, it's nothing. So we now have someone else. It's not Richard. We've got their mother saying that he had some strange conversation with her. When she asked him later if he still had a foreboding feeling, he was dismissive. Even after he disappeared, she held out hope until his body was identified. Yesterday was the first day I could speak without crying all the time. It's been devastating, she told Fox News. When someone kills one of your children, they kill part of you. A couple of other details get cleared up in this article. You know, there was people saying that, oh, he must have been broke. He was living in a trailer at the hospital. It was actually a luxury RV, a Thor Motor Coach Challenger, and the retail on that, $260,000. His family would also be very clear. No. This was effectively a place for him to go and sleep in between those shifts and get right back to work. And he lived that way because he loves his work. The iPhone that he used to communicate with Barnett was later found charging in the unlocked RV. So here we're hearing about one cell phone, specifically the cell phone that was used to text his fiancée that morning. And he left that in the RV and then went in the car, had a different phone with him in the car, possibly 2, if I recall correctly. It's hard to keep track of this because the different articles are kind of throwing different numbers at us. And we're going to get another one here soon. But the Aquatic Center told us it's a motion-activated camera that shoots a series of stills, and it's unreliable, Richard said. So that's why the footage is kind of hard for them to understand, but they think they got the basics of it. In his car, the wallet, the phone, a U.S. passport, some other articles say laptop as well. But for the phone, they say it's a Google Pixel 6 Pro, and police say that it was badly cracked. But Richard said that it had been pristine a few days earlier. So I don't know if Richard saw it. Someone must have seen it and said that phone was fine a few days earlier. But for some reason, when police found it, it was cracked. Investigators recovered a total of 5 phones and a computer from the RV and Infinity. 5 phones. And Benton detectives told the family they were able to access all the devices. They said they know a lot more now and are halfway through their investigation, said Richard. I have no idea what that means. That is a lot of cell phones, especially for someone, this guy's tech savvy. Like, this is a person, I saw some descriptions about that in his RV, he'd have like random math written up on a whiteboard, lines of code. We know that there was at least a few apps that were developed for their cryptocurrency company. I would think he was at least smart enough to understand some form of programming if he's writing lines of code in his trailer. So interesting to me, like, what do you need 5 phones for? Even when I went searching for like, why do people have multiple phones? All those articles are very strong about 2 phones, 2 phones, 2 phones. Oh, you're a drug dealer. Like, and that's pretty much the trend that I see out there. Even thinking if he had multiple businesses, let's say he had 4 other businesses that were legit. Why are you going to have all these different phones? You could have all those numbers go to one phone. Like, I don't know. 5 phones is a lot. And I think it's pointing to there's some aspect of his life that we're not getting a clear picture of here. One aspect that is clear is you have a very large family, siblings, children, aunts, uncles, parents, cousins, a lot of people hurting around this loss. And here are some images from the funeral. Just a little detail about it. A friends and family's farewell. John and Richard Forsyth were among 7 siblings and an extended family with more than 100 cousins. The brothers grew up in both Southwest Missouri and Alberta, Canada, and had dual American and Canadian citizenship, Richard Forsyth said. The family had a private funeral, followed by a public vigil in a park in Monette, just north of Cassville. There, about 40 people, mostly family members, lit memorial candles and shared poignant and humorous stories about him. Colleagues remembered how Forsyth often tried to lighten the mood in the intense emergency room of a hospital in the town of Aurora where he worked. Nurse Leah Tate remarked that he liked to see just how much he could annoy you, and that remark drew chuckles from those gathered at the memorial service. She said Forsyth once made it his mission to get a nurse to throw something at him, at least once a day. Louise Hensley, a Monette resident and former neighbor of John Forsyth, said he treated her husband, who had Lou Gehrig's disease for several years. He was always so caring about his patients. He was so helpful to my husband and me during that time, she said. And what about 2 important items, the trailer and the car? They are sitting at the impound lot at the sheriff's department, basically. And that's at least as of a few months ago. Like I said, there's been really no updates on this case in months at this point. And that leaves a bunch of questions behind, questions that remain. Authorities have not said whether they believe Forsyth was killed or took his own life. Initially, when Forsyth's empty car was found, investigators said there were no signs of foul play, but that was before the body was found. Shannon Jenkins, spokesperson for the Benton County Sheriff's Department, said that there is no immediate threat to the public. So there's that message again, but declined to provide more details. She said no further information would be released until the investigation is completed. It's also unclear what Forsyth's connection might be to the second vehicle seen in the surveillance video. Authorities have not confirmed any information about the video, including if it was taken before or after Forsyth may have texted his fiancée. I think I've seen timelines that kind of answer that, and basically he texts his fiancée actually right before 7 a.m. And I believe the timeline of that video is like 7:12 to 7:15, somewhere like that. So we also know that the phone he texted her from was found back at the RV. There's also no information on how Forsyth got from Cassville to Beaver Lake, when and where he died, or if investigators have found a weapon. That's got to be the biggest one, especially if you're trying to consider some potential that for some reason he ended his own life. It did occur to me that you could drive to a location, call for a ride share, and then wait for the ride share to pick you up, and then leave your phone behind and go get in the ride. The ride would still get billed. There's no reason for you to have your phone necessarily in the car if you were using a ride share. So what I'm wondering about in this particular case, and that possibility, I don't know that it's a strong possibility. Quite honestly, I feel like we don't know enough about how his body was discovered, the conditions around that, the gunshot wound, what the experts are saying about that. We don't even have the coroner's final determination. So it's really hard. But running down that train of thought, what if there was a 6th phone? What if he used that for lining up the ride share? What if it was a pure burner phone and he went and he tossed it in a trash can somewhere? We would never know. So I can't completely rule that out. The possibility of this being related to the cryptocurrency stuff, I'm not feeling super strong about, and I'll tell you guys why. The information that I did find for this endeavor doesn't look like it was, I mean, yes, it was serious in that there was apps developed. Yes, they had some type of business plan that they thought would be successful. But from what I understand, a big part of that business plan would have included some type of social media proliferation. Like if it is working in any way, like a pyramid scheme, as was described at one of the financial sites when I was looking into this, you need people. So how do you get people? You have to use, and nowadays you'd have to use the internet. You'd have to use social media. That Facebook page we were looking at for their company, they were doing like one post a month, like for the past few years. And that's it. There's no big social media push that I'm seeing there. They have a Twitter account. I think they stopped posting in like 2019, or there's a couple posts after that. There is nothing that I'm seeing in terms of that business really being all that serious. Like it seems to me like it was an idea they were kind of tinkering around with. They had kind of done a little footwork, maybe put up a website, got the Facebook page, got the Twitter, kind of started doing that, and maybe didn't put a whole lot more into it. If that's the case, what does anyone have to be mad about? From what I understand, there are tens of thousands of these different cryptocurrencies. Most of them you've never heard of, and a lot of people never will hear about them. Everyone's trying to be the new cryptocurrency. Yes, there's a little bit of an angle with this one that's different because it is kind of, I mean, there's a vein in cryptocurrency that's kind of anti-establishment already. And this one is even anti-establishment in some way. And yes, I did see one post on the Facebook page where someone seemed angry at them because supposedly you were supposed to be able to refer people and they were supposed to be able to get in for free and then have this thing that's worth money all of a sudden. And they were saying that the people they were referring were being asked for some kind of fee. And they were like, what is this? This isn't what you guys, basically sold to me in terms of me getting other people on board. It doesn't seem real to me. That aspect, I'm not seeing enough there that company was in any type of position to really be threatening to anyone in terms of their business, or even being all that, like, even if you were mad at it. So you got into a cryptocurrency that all of a sudden you found out sucked. Like, I think people are doing that on the daily right now. Yeah, maybe you'd go to Facebook and you'd blast them or leave a nasty post somewhere or write up a Reddit page about them or something like that. Track someone down, somehow convince them to meet you at a park, kidnap them, kill them, and take them to another state. It doesn't make sense. Now, if you thought that was the end roundup for the video, not quite. KY3 did a bunch of really good work in September. They kind of went back to this case. They put together a bunch of new information on it. There's a couple of important points that I think are worth looking at. And they also did a sit down with Richard. And quite honestly, there's some pretty important moments in that interview that I think we should look at as well, that might give you some feelings one way or another about his involvement. I mean, look, let's be honest. Who would gain the most from John's death in this case? We've got a business partner. We've got someone that's partners reportedly in several different companies with him. Richard also happens to be the trust manager for John's estate in the event of his death. Richard notes that they had conversations about what would happen if John died and all that kind of stuff. And he kind of brings it up from the aspect of like, hey, look, he was worried about something because he was, we had these plans in place about what would happen if he died. Well, ultimately it looks like the person that all of a sudden gets all the control in terms of the business interests is the brother. And we have this kind of bizarre, well, not bizarre, we have this component where all of a sudden there's a new fiance, all of a sudden there's a new child coming in. John's finances are about to get divided again, and he's just coming out of a marriage that has divided up his finances. Would that trigger Richard in terms of some action and some reason? So let's look into some information that was put together by KY3, and a big shout out to Elizabeth Van Mitri, who did the work on this, also did the interview with Richard, directly asked him some pretty tough questions to ask someone where you're kind of poking around. Hey, do you have some involvement in this case? Let's take a look at this together and check out some of Elizabeth's great work. So the first thing I want to point out is Richard does note there's some weirdness around the identification of John's body. And once again, we're getting this through Richard's filter, so I don't know how much to trust this, but if what he's saying is actually true, this is kind of a weird thing.
As the family prepares to bury Dr. Forsyth, they realize no one asked them to identify the body.
We asked them very pointedly how the body was identified, and the lead detective said that he did it. And we asked how, and he said by facial recognition.
So there's been a lot of talk around this aspect of the facial recognition. I think in most of the cases I've heard of, the confirmation of identity is done by a family member. So it is kind of weird that they're saying, no, it was done by the lead investigator. I don't quite understand that. The closed casket might be speaking as to the gunshot wound. It might have been one of those situations where they have to have a closed casket. But of course, when you have that condition, you have the internet run off and start talking about like, oh, was his body really in there at all? And especially because you've got this cryptocurrency angle and people thinking about some type of conspiracy being wrapped up around his death, which it's hard not to with the conditions, right? Like him meeting up with an SUV, all of a sudden he goes missing. He's found across state lines. Like it sounds pretty big in terms of the story. But from what I could find, first of all, in terms of the facial recognition, I don't think we're talking automated facial recognition. I've seen some interviews from Richard where I think that's kind of the direction he's going in. I'm not aware of any automated, like PC facial recognition thing that could be used as a legal recognition for like a death certificate. I don't think that exists yet. If you guys are aware of anything like that, please let me know about it in the comments down below. Apparently he did have a tattoo, so it might be that they were able to compare the tattoo with a known photo. But even that, I don't know that that's enough for a legal recognition. Of course, the states all work so differently, it's really hard to tell for sure. But a little strange that you do have the family saying, hey, did you guys confirm his identity? No, I didn't. I didn't either. How do we know for certain that this is actually him? But at the end of this segment, that's when Elizabeth really drops a question on Richard.
Was his brother involved?
I'm certain many people out there are saying he knows more. He's just not saying. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know why I don't know.
I know some of you out there are probably aware of duping delight, I believe it's called. It's been a couple years since I looked this up, but essentially sometimes when someone is lying, if they feel like they have you convinced, they might actually you might see relief, they might giggle, they might smile, something along those lines. I think it's an unfortunate reaction that he has in there. There is kind of a giggle, but I don't know that it's necessarily tied to that. And I don't know that you could really rely on that type of analysis for something like that. This guy is on camera. We don't know what else is happening in the room at that moment. I think, and he's uncomfortable. And admittedly, some people, when they get uncomfortable, that is their default reaction. It's hard for some of us to understand, but I've seen it enough times to know that. Coming off that segment, I really didn't have very strong feelings that Richard would really be involved with anything in this case. Then they released a 30-minute interview, and that has just taken me on a roller coaster ride. And I'm kind of stuck with those considerations that I mentioned before, especially because that's where I learned it was in this 30-minute interview. I mean, this guy is a partner in numerous businesses. He's the executor of his estate now that he's passed away. Right off the bat, one of the first things I think most of us are wondering is why is he talking? He's doing all this based on what he said in this interview. He hasn't really lawyered up, and he might have reason to when we get into some aspects of this interview. But let's start with why he's talking.
A big thing that people have asked is, why does Richard keep talking and Richard keep coming forward? Can you tell me a little bit about how the family decided that you would be sort of the person in this?
We didn't. Nobody wanted to get in front of cameras. In a time of grieving, people easily crying and losing their composure. Nobody wanted to be in front of cameras. I have some experience with media, with being in front of cameras, and I guess I'm the one who volunteered, and everyone was grateful that I would do that. The reason I'm here is to seek the truth and to encourage the public, anybody who knows anything, to come forward. Also to help continue public interest in this case so that it stands a chance of being solved.
Now, considering that kind of simplistic investigative approach of who would benefit most from this person being deceased, and knowing that Richard certainly benefits in some way and maybe significantly, depending on your perspective, has he ever been considered a suspect? This really surprised me.
Oh, well, they served a warrant on my home. They searched my home, and the warrant and specifically was for a gun that I possess. They told me that their investigation has revealed that my brother was killed by a 40mm bullet that was fired from a Glock. I own a Glock that fires a 40mm gun. In fact, I made that known to them very early in the investigation and offered it to them for their examination the first time they came and visited me, along with all my other pistols. And I told them that they didn't need a warrant with me to search my house or to sequester any of my property.
I do want to note that I looked it up. The 40mm, like what Glock can fire a 40 cal, Google's response to that was, by far the most popular police service pistol in the United States, the Glock 22 fires the potent 40 S&W cartridge and holds more rounds for its size and weight than most other full-sized handguns. So it's pretty interesting that I'm trying to not go down, the conspiracy angle here, but the gun that they're looking for is probably fairly common, considering that it's one of the most popular guns used in the police service here in the US. But he also has one. So I think it makes sense that they would ask him about that. But there's actually more that he shares with us here.
No, I did not bring a lawyer because I don't need one. I have nothing to hide, and I'm not nervous about questions or what the investigation may reveal regarding me. I am anxious that the investigation uncover the truth about what happened to my brother and who did this to him and why. But I know what the truth is. I have played no part in any of this, and I have had no foreknowledge of any of this.
My understanding is you also took a lie detector test and you were willing to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. They asked if I was willing, and I said, of course I am. Yeah.
And how did that go?
They said that I did not pass the lie detector test. They also said that they believed that I studied it to cheat it, which I think is an amazing contradiction. But I think that this is just part of the process. I think they were putting pressure on me to see if I had more to say, and I don't. I did not lie. I've never lied to the police. I've not failed to say something that I should have or that I know. And I've told them I'll come back. I'll take the lie detector test 100 times. I actually don't think that those are actually tests. I think what they are props. I think that they put those up as a sort of bit of theater to create an environment in which a person feels pressure.
Now, I don't necessarily disagree with him there. And quite honestly, investigators could tell you failed a test when you actually passed one. They could use that as an investigative measure as well. And of course, I know many of you out there also wonder about the validity of the lie detector test. I find it interesting that he would say, they told me I failed the test, but then also said that I tried to circumvent it. Because did that mean that you failed at circumventing it and they noticed that? Or is that why you failed, that they thought that you were taking measures to actually circumvent it? So once again, it's pretty hard because everything we're hearing is really from his perspective. But he did have some comments on that facial recognition aspect as well. I just wanted to share with you guys.
My understanding at this point was that police identified his body from facial recognition and from a tattoo.
And I just want to emphasize to any viewers that are watching right now that we have reached out to the Benton County Sheriff's Office for clarity on that and what that facial recognition procedure looks like, and they have not gotten back.
And that's kind of why it's unfair that there wasn't a recognition done by a family member. I think it's an important aspect in terms of the grieving process, just that there's someone that verifies, yes, I know it was my loved one. I'm the one that saw them. And that has basically led to some members of this family that are even doubting if Dr. Forsyth's body is in the casket. And keep in mind, we've got this whole kind of fantastic aspect of he's wrapped up in these businesses. And there's even comments from Richard about the fact that maybe John would have wanted to have disappeared or kind of staged his disappearance in some way. They already mentioned he had dual citizenship. He could have gone back to Canada. Apparently he was kind of adopted by some tribes out there that he could have moved in and been taken care of with. So I think there's a lot of chatter kind of within the family about those possibilities. And with them not having that hard confirmation of like, no, mom saw it was him. I don't know that that chatter goes away. So it's kind of unfair that that step, I don't know if that step was mishandled or if things just run differently in Missouri, but it didn't go quite as we see in other cases. Ultimately, he says it's just about him wanting to raise exposure. So let's get kind of a final comment from him.
And why do you think people are so interested in this case in particular?
Because it's really weird, because none of it makes any sense, because I suppose probably because of the word crypto, it's interesting. I don't know.
Some pretty shocking moments in that interview. I'll have a link to the entire interview kind of close to the top of the sources down below so you guys can check it out for yourselves. Please give it the time. And there's some other details in there that I think you'll find interesting as well. But ultimately, it comes down to a life lost, 9 children now without their father, as we can see from this article. On June 25th of 2023, the late Dr. John Forsyth's family says the Cassville doctor's fiance gave birth Sunday morning. So now 9 children missing their father, and a mystery that is extremely hard to understand. There's just so many different stories that are spinning around this man. It seems like this is a person that had different faces in his life that he would share with certain other people. Is one of those responsible for his disappearance? I'm still not completely writing off the possibility that maybe this is a self-harm situation, but there's a lot of other indicators that make you think twice about that. All the way down to something as simple, you know, they say when it comes to murder, it's usually one of 3 things, right? Like it's money, it's power, or it's love and or sex. And in this case, we do have pretty much all of those elements firing. So it's really hard to know which avenue of the investigation is the strongest. But if anything, from that last turn that we heard from Richard with his gun being taken, with him being questioned, him being put through a lie detector test, I think that's strong confirmation that this is being looked at as at least possibly a homicide. I don't know if it's just a general death investigation and that's one of the aspects that they're looking at, or if this is actually a homicide investigation and they're looking in that direction because they're trying to figure out who benefits most. And oh, by the way, he happens to have the right type of weapon. And that kind of also makes me think that there's a strong possibility they did not find the weapon in the water. And if they didn't, then that possibility of homicide is even higher. So it's kind of bizarre to me that we haven't seen an update on this case, but of course we will keep our eyes open for that. And if we do see some significant developments, we'll be sure to share them with you here on the channel. Thank you so much for hanging in for this episode. I know this is a super long episode, but also a very big thank you to our supporters that help keep us here with minimal ads. It doesn't matter if the episode's 15 minutes or an hour and a half. You're only ever going to see 2 ads, and that's because of our amazing supporters. If you want to join that team, please visit LordanArts.com, where you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee. You can do all of that at LordanArts.com. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for supporting the show through this year. We will be back next Friday, but it'll be with the best of Seriously Mysterious, and then we're going to take our holiday break after that. And then, of course, 2024, more episodes of BrainScratch coming your way. Take care. I'll see you again here soon on the LordanArts channel.